My name's Jamal, and I just think it's important that when we talk about issues like police brutality, you know, that we know the actual cases. So how many of y'all are familiar with some of the cases that have happened in Boston and around Boston? All right. So just last month, September 9th, a man named Mark McMullen was shot after a high-speed chase. So that's one case, and there's some questions that arise there. All right. This man at first, nothing was reported on his race, and myself, what I'm gonna refer to is the list of a lot of people who have been shot and killed. Because police brutality, of course, takes multiple forms. There's people who are beat up and live to tell the story. There are some people who are no longer with us, right? So in that, at first it was not reported anything about the person's race. Subsequent, his name was Mark McMullen, Irish surname. My name's Crawford, so it does, that doesn't mean anything, obviously. Yeah. But no one knew. But then reports came back from the community that it was indeed a black man, in keeping with the tradition that has been happening. Because one thing that I can tell you, outside of two victims who had experience with the Boston police that resulted in their death, one is the young white girl, Victoria Snellgrove. You remember that happened in the Red Sox? Now, people, have a debate about that. I'm pretty clear that that was an accident. Why do I say it was an accident? Because she was killed with a weapon that was not even made for the purposes of killing, right? A pepper spray pellet gun, right? And then another person, David McManus, who, no, pardon me, I said the officer's name. And it was the part of me. What is the young man? What is the man's last name? The young white gentleman. His name is escaping me right now. Woodman. Is it Woodman? Thank you, David Woodman. Thank you. David Woodman. What happened outside of the Boston Garden, where the young man, in the course of being apprehended and being in custody, had some sort of respiratory failure and died. So those are two examples right there of how generally white people die at the hands of police brutality. Something that is clearly an accident or unintended or what have you. Oftentimes with our people, Black, Latino, and Cape Verdean people, it seems to be very purposeful. There's usually a gun involved, a bullet, right, or several, right? And also, too, this is a phenomenon that's happened across the country. So everybody here is familiar with cases of Sean Bell, Oscar Grant, of course, Rodney King getting beat up, Abner Louima getting brutalized, so on and so forth. And just this past week, a young man in Atlanta, where I used to live for a little while, was killed by officers down there on the MARTA train. So these incidents always happen. And here's a couple of things that I like in discussing it, particularly when I discuss it with police who are very resistant to the idea that officers ever do anything wrong. Well, my thing is, okay, has anyone here, by a show of hands, has anyone here ever heard of a group of black cops who mistakenly shot a white kid? Crickets. I've asked people who've been in law enforcement for over 30 years and no one can remember a single incident where black officers have mistakenly, purposely, whatever, shot a white kid. Why is it always seen that white officers are killing Black, Latino, and Cape Verdean men in the city here? All right, so some of these things happened in other areas, but they're still pertinent. How many of y'all heard about the case of Yuri Stamps? Yuri Stamps was killed in Framingham by the Framingham police, who he's a grandfather, elderly man, worked, retired. Officers came to the home because there were reports that the young two grandsons were selling drugs or something like that. So they came there on that, and it resulted in this man being shot. Now the report came back, and I kid you not, the official explanation that they gave was that the officer tripped and fell, and his gun went off. The shotgun, right? So, that's a heck of a doozy right there. You know what I mean? And oftentimes I think that's the other part of police brutality, because the bold face, like they say it with a straight face, and the party line that they're kicking out, that our own government, we pay for this building, taxpayer dollars, you know what I mean? That's supposed to protect and serve and work us. public servants, right? A public servant, right? We the public, right? So there's a problem there when they can come back to you, not hear your complaints, and then also give you the same line over and over and over. No officers guilty of any wrongdoing. So that's what happened to Yuri Stamps. That was January 11th of this year. Just a couple of days, after the new year, and a couple of days before the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. Yuri Stamps, 68-year-old, retired MBTA mechanic. There was another incident here in April 3rd of last year with a young Cape Verdean man by the name of Manuel de Vega, 19 years old, shot to death by Boston police. What Boston police have said is that he had a gun, fired at officers, and that the fatal blow was delivered by himself in a suicide. The community has questioned this. The community has another version of events. I've talked to several people who either witnessed it or have spoken to witnesses and different family members in that community, and they have a different version of events, once again, in the police. We will never know, because the DA investigates these things. We don't have the power of investigation to subpoena people and pull records and do all this stuff. Any of you have ever tried to file a Freedom of Information Act, you know how long and cumbersome that process could be. And unless you got some legal muscle behind you, it's very difficult to do, right? So when that happened to Manuel de Vega and all these questions were, once again, they come back and say, officers, no wrongdoing, because DA Dan Comey, and I was told this by a very well-known attorney here, Howard Friedman in Boston, that Dan Comey in 9.5 years has never, not once, never returned any kind of determination that officers were guilty of any wrongdoing. So Manuel de Vega, that happened on April 3rd, 2010. Joseph Ramos, out on the Cape, in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, been working with his sister, very upset about what happened. This man had a medical condition, was struggling with health issues. Another person who was killed by police. His crime, he was armed with a dangerous weapon, a stick. A stick that in the Cape, where he walks through the areas where he walks, there's a lot of dogs out there, like, just dogs roaming. So he had like a walking stick, all right? Killed with a stick. Marquise Barker, November 21st, 2007. This man was killed in Norfolk Street. This man was a corrections officer, had worked there for a substantial amount of time, 5 kids, apparently and purportedly was having some sort of mental breakdown, nervous breakdown, or some sort of high anxiety stress, and had an altercation with the officers, which resulted in his death. He left the scene of where they were called to, jumped in a cruiser, and ended up getting shot with he had a BB gun, all right? So those are some of the cases. I have more information here, and I just start, reading them off. Stanley Steve, shot to death October 3rd, 2005, 28 years old. July 2nd, 2004, Luis Gonzalez, 57 years old. And there was an officer involved in that who has a very questionable record, all right? Now, what I say, July 2nd, 2004, right? June 27th of 2004, only a few days before that, Bert Bowen was killed, 40 years old, around Blue Hill Avenue area. And I will read this one. The June 27th shooting angered the community because Bowen, 40, was shot 3 times, once in the back of the head, while fleeing after a traffic stop, right? And witnesses say he was unarmed. After an investigation, they determined that the murder was justifiable, no wrongdoing. September 25th, 2002, Cape Verdean young woman, a mother, Evelyn Barros Cepeda, she was shot to death while riding in the backseat of a car. She wasn't doing anything. She just happened to be a passenger in a vehicle. Officers opened fire. Bullets went through the glass, and she's dead. A young mother. Daniel Furtado, 59 years old. This happened July 15, 2002 in Cambridge, Mass. Right? And Daniel Furtado, also similar to Mr. Luis Gonzalez, there's also another trend that we need to watch, where a lot of these people, and the other brother I mentioned, a lot of these people also have mental health issues, right? And they're being killed. Levita Jackson, 36 years old, another person with mental health issues, on July 2nd, 2002, she was killed. 3 cops shot 15 to 20 rounds into this woman. She committed a horrific crime with her children. May 2002, Nelson Santiago, he rammed a stolen car into a cruiser. February 12, 2002, Willie Murray Jr., 37 years old, killed in Roxbury, right around the corner from my street. Now, watch this. This is the only case, this one here, that's the only case in which an officer, not by the DA, there was no DA investigation, but the family took the city to court. The city paid out a settlement, so it didn't go all the way, paid out a settlement. This is the only time that this has happened, right? The officer was black. You understand what I'm saying? All right. And then on top of that, I kill a member of your family. We come to agreement of a figure. What kind of monetary figure would you take for the life of your brother? Throw a number out there. What do you think? Right, several hundred million, right? Yeah, his family got $75,000. Y'all heard that? $75,000. We killed your family member. Here's $75,000. Now we don't talk about this anymore. Okay? So these cases go on and on. You can find all this stuff with Blackstonian. We've been going against this for a while, and I'm gonna really shut down. But you know, there's some pictures here too. This is what police brutality looks like in Boston. Who's this dude? Is he the leader of the Crips or something? He's a gangbanger? No, he's a firefighter, right? And this is what they did. You see his face? All right. Once again, get all these information. Take the pictures now, but you know, Google is a hell of a drug. Go Google these people. That's why I'm giving you the names and the dates, and I got it all compiled in a nice, neat list. His name is Wayne Abram. That happened on October 31st of 2010. Of course, y'all are familiar with that image. What happened right down the street here at RCC. And we've been working with that young man's family and whatnot. I'm glad to report that he's no longer in custody. He's out. He's doing better. We're trying to get his life, you know, moving forward in a positive direction. So I'm going to really end with this, and then, you know, introduce some of the people here, you know, who can really speak to the issue. But the bottom line is this: we're not just saying police brutality. You know, we have an agenda. So there's a couple of things that we demand that Menino, Commissioner Davis, who we've been trying to get to come to a meeting in the community for a long time to talk about these issues. Boston has a very treacherous history in dealing with communities of color. So I wanted to do a forum, an open town hall public meeting, a forum entitled Black and Blue, the relationship between communities of color and the police department. Sounds pretty simple, right? I'm just, you know, just a citizen and a taxpayer. You know, I just vote a little bit, right? So is there a big deal with us calling the commissioner of the department who works for us, right? I don't work for him, he works for us. To call him to the community to discuss these issues, hash it out, and let's get there. Here are our agenda items. Number one, Boston Police Department does a horrible job of diversity in its ranks. The makeup of the administration of the Boston Police Department does not reflect the diversity in the city. Now, not that I believe that if more Black, Latino, and Cape Verdean officers were in positions of power, that we're going to all of a sudden get justice. No, but I think that's one way that we may get closer to that goal and have a better relationship with the officers so that they actually look like the communities that they are policing. Because I know all my life growing up, there has been a stigma of largely aggressive, young, white or old, male officers who are white, often Irish, Italian, who patrol the neighborhoods and do not have a favorable opinion of Black, Latino, and Cape Verdean people, and you can tell because they act it out on the daily. You can tell they don't like you, they don't respect you, they look at you in often cases as subhuman, right? So that's one point. We want more diversity in the ranks. Another thing, they have something here called the co-op. Have you ever heard of the co-op? Stands for the Community Ombudsman Oversight Panel. When the community was screaming about having a civilian review board, the mayor, in his wisdom, says, I better get ahead of this thing, and if there's going to be a call for a civilian review board, then I better be the one to do it. So he starts off and he appoints the members. He appointed 3 members, and the community was in an uproar because we thought it was going to be weak. And I'm happy to report that I knew some of the people on the panel, and they weren't as weak as I thought they were going to be. Their first report was critical of the entire process. They don't have the power to initiate their own investigations. So if they go home at night, see something on TV like the RCC incident, they can't go to work the next day and say, hey, that thing we just saw last night, open the books on that. We want to investigate that. The only way that something gets to the co-op is after it goes through the own internal affairs complaint process, which via one of the brochures that they print out has 27 steps. All right? And then the co-op gets it after that. And that's only if the people's complaints have been denied, then they appeal it, and then the appeal is denied, then it gets to the co-op. So that's a good system, right? That seems like that would work well for everybody who would have a complaint, right? It seems like it's nice and easy and not too cumbersome, right? Right? No. All right? So that's one thing. We want the co-op to have independent investigation powers. When they see something or hear something that comes to them, they have the ability to initiate their own investigation. Two, they need to have subpoena powers so that they have the tools necessary to collect the information and call people in and collect testimony. All right? And lastly, too, we also co-op. That's great. That's great. But it's not a civilian review board. It's a board appointed by the mayor of people who are professionals in the field of criminal justice. We want a true civilian review board. One that, like me and the people behind me, could be on. One that y'all could be on. An old 80-year-old white lady from Charlestown, a young black man from Roxbury. That's a civilian review board, right? Showing the diversity of the city once again, so the regular folks can go over what the police has done and come to their own conclusions and report back to their communities. So we say yes to the co-op, give them powers, and in addition to that, we want a true civilian review board with the same powers. Lastly as well, we're also right now working with some of our good friends at the state level to call and write the act to call for a commission to be created. A statewide commission on police brutality, and we hope that you join in that call. Why? Because of what we know. Cities and towns, police departments are not effectively, they're either unwilling or unable or both to investigate themselves, right? Doesn't work anywhere else. Doesn't work anywhere else. If a corporation, some of these corporations that we're talking about during the Occupy movement, is doing something, what, should Bank of America investigate Bank of America? Does that work out? How does that happen? No, the feds intervene or other people intervene, and there's checks and balances. So we have to have the same thing with our police force, and we believe that a statewide commission against to monitor police brutality across the state and misconduct across the state would be one way. Once again, we're not going to get justice just through that vehicle alone, but it's like football, moving it forward and forward and forward incrementally. Right? So we need that statewide commission on police brutality in order to have a larger oversight over all the cities and towns that are within this Commonwealth. And what we hope is that the state body, because it's not attached to any one city or town, would be a little bit more independent than the DA, who was never, DA Suffolk County, Dan Conley, who has never in 9.5 years returned anything about wrongdoing. So with that, anybody from here, please come up, speak. I'm done. Any questions, hit me up. This information is on Blackstonian.com. It's clear remark, Blackstonian.com, and you can go to focus on law enforcement, and all that information is there. Thank you.